Hello, I'm Dr. Paul Firnhaber. This is Lincoln Disc and Nutrition, and today I'm with you to give you another 10 minutes of truth. Today we're going to talk about autoimmune disease and some of its origins and some things that the American public really needs to know based on really good research. So I've got an article today out of the Journal of Clinical and Cellular Immunology in 2017. The name of the article is Correlation of Tissue Antibodies and Food Immune Reactivity in Random Selected Patient Specimens. So what they did was they took 118 patients and they tested for food and tissue antibodies. And the primary groups of foods that they tested were wheat and gluten, dairy, and foods with lectins. Now, you go, what are lectins? Lectins are the part of plants that protect it from other plants, from molds, and from insects. So foods that are high in lectins that people might be susceptible to are like green peppers, tomatoes, beans, cucumbers, potatoes. Those are plants that have high lectin content. And so what they did was they took these samples of these 118 patients and they looked at, are they developing tissue antibodies to certain foods? So they looked at the people that were intolerant to gluten, and they found that 20% of these people were developing autoimmune thyroid issues, 42% adrenal issues, 40% autoimmune antibodies in heart tissue, 18% in ovarian and testes, 27% in joints, 13% in bone, 18% in liver. And look at this, a whopping 51% were developing tissue antibodies to their own brains and nervous system. Then they looked at dairy, and they found out that at dairy is also pretty much the same. 20% of people who were intolerant to dairy products were starting to develop autoimmune antibodies to thyroid, 43% to adrenal, 40% to heart, 10% to ovary, 30% to joint, 20% to bone, 17% to liver, and 60% to brain tissue and neurological tissue. And finally, they looked at lectins. With lectins, they found another 20% thyroid issues, 56% adrenal issues, 44% heart issues, 28% to ovary and testes, 36% to joint, 24% to bone, 28% to liver, and 68% were developing antibodies to their own neurological tissue. So what is the issues here? What is the bottom line here? Well, look at this. If somebody is eating plant lectins and it's a woman and she's unable to get pregnant, maybe it's because she's developing an autoimmune issue to her ovaries and doesn't even realize it. What about heart attacks? What about people who have heart disease, obstructive pulmonary disease? It could be that a good part of this could be from the foods they're eating. Maybe they're eating dairy, and those dairy products are causing autoimmune issues in the heart. And finally, what about neurological issues? What about chronic depression, chronic Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis? What about these issues? Maybe somebody's eating potatoes, cucumbers, or tomatoes that are very high in lectins, and they're developing neurological issues to these that nobody would even think about. So these are some things that we need to understand. Now, one of the authors of this study is a guy by the name of Aristo Vajani, who's one of the top immunologists in the world. He's written lots and lots of papers, published lots of good research. So Another thing that they found in this study is that a lot of people that have intolerance to gluten also have intolerance to dairy and lectin. So there's a lot of cross reactivity in this. So people that are intolerant to lectins may develop an intolerance to gluten, and they already have a gluten intolerance. And you notice that I didn't put in here anything in the GI tract. In other words, we all know that gluten can cause irritable bowel disease and Crohn's disease. But what they were looking for here is, can these foods cause other issues in the body? So how do you know if this is happening to you? Well, one thing you could do is there is a test that covers a significant, well, it covers all of these autoimmune diseases in one blood test. So you can do a blood test and find out if you're developing autoimmune in any of these. Then you can do another blood test and you can find out, are you intolerant to gluten, dairy, or plant lectins? And if you are, and if you have antibodies to any of these issues, then you can cut out the offending food. Now, here's another very, very, very important point. They found that tissue antibodies could develop 10 years before the symptoms. So you can have these antibodies to these issues in your blood 10 years before you develop any kind of symptom to it. That's called a prodromal period. So the fact of the matter is that you can cut a lot of these problems off at the pass if you think that you might have an issue here. And just by doing a couple of simple blood tests, you could find out, are you developing an autoimmune disease? And if so, what might be causing it? And we're finding out that foods are a big cause of autoimmune disease. Now, where do you get these tests done? Well, we do them here at our office. We can do them here. Just draw blood, send it in, and we can tell you within a couple of weeks what's going on. So we're happy to do that for you. But I want you to understand the relationship between food intolerances and autoimmune disease. And if you have any more questions about this, you can make an appointment in my office. Our office number is 402-488-2220, and I'd be happy to go over those with you. So, if you have any questions, please call us. I hope you got something out of this today, and I'll be with you next Wednesday for another 10 minutes of truth.